Under Labour, we've had two-tier policing, two-tier justice, two-tier politics, and now we've got two-tier healthcare. Home Office Minister Jess Phillips, who quit Starmer's shadow cabinet over the old Gaza ceasefire vote before miraculously finding her way back into the fold post-election, has revealed something quite shocking. She skipped the queue in hospital because a Palestinian doctor liked the fact that she was pro-Gaza and voted for a ceasefire. She said, "The doctor who saw me was Palestinian. As it turns out, almost all the doctors in Birmingham seem to be. He was sort of like, I like you, you voted for a ceasefire, I got through quicker." OK. Remember when Sir Keir Starmer said this?
If you had loved ones on a long waiting list for surgery, would you, if you felt that that was the only way forward, use private healthcare? Rishi Sunak?
Yes.
Keir Starmer?
No.
Absolutely no, if your loved one was on a waiting list for surgery?
No.
Well, it turns out you don't have to if you're a pro-Palestine Labour MP. You can just skip the hospital queue anyway, can't you? This is the same Jess Phillips who sparked outrage when she appeared to justify a load of Muslim men mobbing up on a roundabout in Birmingham to see off the mythical threat of the EDL, which didn't turn up, but later that same night, this did happen.
Oh, the battery!
See a Palestine flag in the back there, actually. Anyway, this is the same Jess Phillips, who is also the Minister for Safeguarding and Violence Against Women and Girls, who remained conspicuously quiet about a Muslim man attacking 3 women for not wearing traditional Islamic dress in Bradford. But the issue of a pro-Palestine MP getting preferential hospital treatment highlights something much bigger, in my view. If most of the doctors at the hospital in Birmingham were Palestinian, as she says, or even just pro-Palestinian, so not even actually Palestinian, just sympathetic to the cause, how would Birmingham's Jewish community have been treated at that time, do we think? We had an incident in Manchester where a Jewish boy was booted out of his bed by nurses wearing Palestine flag badges. It feels like every little bit of Britain's public sector has suddenly been politicised by the pro-Palestine brigade. The head of the National Education Union wants to globalise the intifada. There were civil servants out on the stump at pro-Palestine marches. The police turned a blind eye to criminal damage and anti-Semitism. And now doctors will give you preferential treatment if you support their cause. Well, prominent journalist Harry Cole even tweeted that he didn't realise that the H in the NHS stood for Hamas. There we are. It really is saying something if Sir Keir Starmer's 2 tiers extend to whether or not you get medical assistance. Let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. I have got ex-BBC and ITV political chief John Sargent. I have a businesswoman, entrepreneur Joanna Jarju, and political commentator Alex Armstrong. Alex, I'll start with you and I'll work my way down. Do you think that there is kind of a worrying thing here, 2-tier healthcare system?
This is absolute shocking news. I mean, first of all, for Jess Phillips to say it out loud, I think that is a massive misdemeanour on her behalf. She's admitted that she's getting extra care because of her political views. I think this doctor should be exposed and struck off immediately. We need to send a strong message that you do not get preferential treatment under our National Health Service based on your political views. We've already seen the justice system completely corrupted by this. We had the man who threw cement at Nigel Farage, he's been let off, but other people for writing social media tweets have gone to prison, right? When is this going to stop? The British public will be up to their eyeballs, and this might even be the final straw for some people. I fear for the, as you said, the Jewish community who are going to go into the NHS now wondering if they're going to be at the back of the queue.
That's the point, isn't it? I mean, you know, Birmingham has got a big Jewish population. I mean, the implication here is if you were visibly Jewish and you got ill in that Birmingham hospital at that time, you might have been at the back of the queue.
I don't understand why Jess Phillips has done this. It just seems like the most ridiculously stupid thing that you could do. She's basically thrown red meat at people like Alex now to be able to say, well, actually, there is a 2-tier healthcare system and people who support Palestine get preferential treatment.
I might have to thank her. She has exposed it, hasn't she?
No, well, she hasn't exposed it. What she's done is done something that's actually very stupid in the sense that I think that if you were in a hospital, if she was Elton John or Adele or something like that, you might get, really great to meet you. I know something about you because you're a public person. I think that people just treat you better in general if you're, a public figure. But I don't think that she was put to the front of the queue. Realistically, she went in the hospital as well because she had blue lips and had difficulty breathing. I think anybody who goes in A&E would get to the front of the queue with those symptoms.
So she also said, it was like she'd seen better hospitals in war zones, she said, than that one. which, I mean, OK, I'm not convinced that's entirely true, is it? But John, you know, if that was the case and she still decided to step over people and get seen by the lovely Palestinian chap, then, you know, maybe that's a problem.
Yes, no, it's terrible. I mean, she just doesn't realise that she's now in a completely different orbit now. She's in government, she's a junior minister, and the old phrase, of going back hundreds of years, is noblesse oblige. If you're in a position of power and responsibility, it's all the more important to realise that you don't push your way in the front, you do this and so on. I used to have lunches with cabinet ministers and I was amazed at the way they were polite to everybody. Why? Because they're right in the public eye, everyone's watching them. She is now in a position, a prominent woman, Labour politician and a minister. She's got to be extremely careful, and to end up boasting about this shows incompetence as well as, frankly, just naivety. She's not in that position anymore. She's got to change her habits and her behaviour, as has Angela Rayner. They don't realise how the eyes are on them and they've got to be super careful about whatever they do from now on.
So I actually really had a lot of respect for Jess Phillips over her standing up when she was getting berated by some of those men that had been, you know, running the campaign against her in her seat. She said that she'd faced, you know, huge amounts of threats and misogyny and all of that stuff. And I thought, you know, good for you, well done. And then I look at this now and I think, well, is there a question, Alex, that our MPs could be compromised by things like, for example, the pro-Palestine issue? If you realise now that your public services have been captured by people who are sympathetic towards a particular cause, that actually you might then behave or vote in a certain way?
Well, that seems to be the case. I mean, she's sort of sharing this message out to other MPs now. By the way, if you're in a slightly pro-Palestine area, you're going to get to the top of the queue if you go in and say X, Y, Z, I'm this MP. I think it's pretty scary, and I think that, you know, people like Keir Starmer said they want to have a fairer society, a fairer Britain, zero tolerance and any nonsense like that, should stand up and go, actually, I don't want someone like that in my government. That she's clearly...
That's going too far to say, you know, it's a naivety, it's a lack of knowledge of what it's like to be in power. 14 years have passed. They've no idea how much the situation has changed. They're right in government now. They can't do this. Now, a few months ago, when this happened... she wouldn't think, oh, well, why not admit it? It didn't matter very much. I was ill. I felt very badly. I would have been treated properly. Wasn't it sort of strange that they should say about I'd voted for the Palestinians?
What she needs to realise, though, is that, like, her words now actually carry a lot of weight. And even if there was that one person who was in the minority who might have said, oh, you know, come in the queue jump, basically, because you support... But the thing is, as soon as she makes that statement, it makes it seem as if every single doctor, and then also pointing out that, you know, the majority of them were Palestinian doctors. What she's done now is actually put a target on this person's head, and people are now going to be calling for this person to be fired.
Well,
they shouldn't do that. No, they shouldn't do that.
She has openly admitted that he put her forward because of her political views. That is wrong. It should never happen.
No, but he didn't say that, did he?
That's what she said.
Well, but I think for a lot of Jewish people in Britain at the moment, so the ones that I've spoken to, when people do go to shops or they use the public services, and there are people there who've got the Palestine badge on, OK, I think for them, some of them, I'm not speaking on behalf of the Jewish community here, of which I am not a member, but I think some of them do feel as though that might be a bit of a show of force. And what does that mean in terms of what kind of service you're going to get if you're visibly Jewish? And stuff like this reinforces it. Stuff like this that we had at the Manchester Hospital, at Wythenshawe Hospital, I think it was as well, you know, reinforces it. And I think that is a bit of a problem, isn't it?
Let's just replace the pro-Palestine with something like EDL, for example, right? Imagine the outcry from the left if someone said, oh, they're sympathetic to my EDL views, for example, something ridiculously radical like that. The left would be in an absolute furore, calling for this guy to be struck off the list. If they want to play the game that way, they should be treated with the same back. Strike this guy off the register, show this is not acceptable in our country, or no matter what your political views are, nobody gets preferential treatment. And I do worry about it. And we go back to that conversation about MPs. You're right to call out, Patrick. How might this affect their vote? How might this affect a sick MP, for example, someone who's undergoing treatment? Many MPs get ill. Will they worry now that if they don't take a pro-Palestine stance that they won't get seen?
Well, there shouldn't really be politics in the NHS. I mean, for a long time, there was a lot of, I think, you know, quite woke ideology in the NHS. We've done numerous segments on this show about, whether or not the LGBT, especially the T bit, has had some kind of big impact there, and what that might mean for people who don't share those views. But Joanna, I would argue that Jess Phillips has actually been, whether or not she's been two-tier here, but she has been when it came to those people who were mobbed up on the roundabout. This follows her tweeting that they were only really there because they heard about the EDL. Well, all right, but they were also there with machetes. They weren't obeying the law, and then they kicked a bloke's head in outside a pub shortly after that.
Well, I think it is realistic that when the riots were going on, obviously we have to look at who was rioting first and who was being the agitator first. And I think that she was right to an extent to say that these people were there to defend themselves. Were there people as well within that crowd who did turn up with machetes and who did jump that guy outside of the pub? Yes, there were. But it goes back to the same thing about her understanding what her position is and how she has to almost, make statements that aren't as inflammatory and don't put a target on her, a target on other people as well.
She has to learn to walk through the minefield. Now, every senior politician knows exactly. When I'm using that phrase, they know exactly what they're talking about. They think, oh, be careful. Maybe misunderstood. Hold on a moment. All your points are perfectly good, Patrick. Particularly with regard to anti-Semitism. These are very serious problems. And that's why all the people, particularly in government, it's easy enough to say, oh, we should all behave the same way and they should be sacked and so on. No. People in government have to learn, and they do learn, and don't expect Jess Phillips to be boasting about this in a few weeks' time. She will not.
I don't think that Jess Phillips is even unique in this situation. I think this is where you kind of start to see the dividing line between who's a career politician and who isn't, because you can see the dividing line in terms of who really recognises the demographic of their seat, and it works both ways. She probably panders a lot to certain communities because she's very aware she wants to keep her seat at the end of the day. But then equally, you've got other people as well. For example, there was another MP who was, standing up and basically disclosing which Holiday Inn in her constituency, because people want their Holiday Inn back, and she tweeted that publicly. And then obviously that shows people exactly what location to go to then try to burn it down. So what I'm saying is that it also works both sides, and what we need to work towards in this country is politicians really recognising their position and not just pandering to be able to keep their job and their salary. Do you think we should have some? Do you think
just to round this off, Alice? Do you think there should be some kind of investigation into whether it's the NHS or the education system or the civil service as to whether or not their political views, in this case the pro-Palestine situation, is impacting the job that they're doing and the quality of output they are delivering to the taxpayer?
Well, I said this months ago. There should be a public investigation into whether there is a two-tier system in our country, particularly for our civil service, our national health service and our justice system, because it's getting quite obvious that people are saying, don't believe what your eyes and ears tell you. And I think the best way the government could put this to bed is to go, let's have a public investigation.
No, because then the argument goes on. No, don't worry. She will have got the message.
But that's not the point, John.
Wait a minute. Most senior politicians will have got the message now. Be much more careful.
Cover it up.
Wait a moment. Don't be silly. No, and the doctor.
Two-tier NHS, National Hamas service.
No, the doctors will also realise they shouldn't be doing this.
I hope so.
You're clutching at straws anyway. Everything is two-tier now because it's a justification.
Well, it's looking like that, isn't it?
It's so funny because it's like people have been talking about two-tier systems, whether it's systematic racism, whether it's about anything else, and nobody's been bothered. And now it's like, oh, well, we would have liked to see more police on the streets in this other instance. Now you start to see what discrimination actually means when you feel like you're the victim of it.
I think now more so than ever, we have been given some cast iron examples of things you can physically hold side by side. And all right, you're right, maybe there was always...
Patrick, there's been cast iron examples all the time. It's a matter of whether people choose to recognise it when it actually is on their doorstep or not, because there's been really kind of severe things, even in the criminal justice system.
You should welcome it then. You should welcome that. If you're saying that there's a problem, then welcome an investigation into it.
Look, we're going to have to draw a line under